The following episode might contain sensitive content that you might not be comfortable listening to. This will include topics such as self-harm, suicide, alcoholism. If any of these things or anything related might disturb you, please proceed with caution or click off the video now. If you truly had one chance to just redo things over, new life, new things, new everything, would you really do it? Hi, my name's Hazy, and welcome to another episode of the Only Rainy Days podcast. Today, I think I'm going to be talking about potential, specifically failed potential, because that's something that I've been thinking about for. It's been a topic that I've been, bothered by, or it's been on my mind for probably the last 6 or so years ago. Since when I got to high school is when I really started to think about the idea of potential and things that were necessarily expected of me due to outlooks from parents, family, friends, teachers, everything, versus how I was actually turning out and actually looking at my own mindset and how I viewed things and how I figured it was appropriate to move forward with my own life. And thinking about those two things, it left me with a very dark sense that I wasn't doing something right. If that makes sense. It felt as if, even though I was pursuing whatever I felt like pursuing, whether it be something that interested me or something that I was necessarily influenced by, there was always this overwhelming feeling that whatever I was doing either wasn't enough or wasn't what was expected of me. And it put me into an abyss. It put me into a mental void that haunted me and lurked with me for a very long time throughout high school. I remember growing up when I was younger, and I grew up in a rather special household, something that a lot of people probably hasn't experienced. I grew up, my mom, she worked jobs. She was a regular person, I guess, quote unquote. She did what she needed to do to survive, and she did whatever she needed to do, but she enjoyed it. So I've talked to her before, way before I was born, stuff like that. She talked about working at like Chick-fil-A and stuff like that. When I was really young, like if I dig deep back into my memory, I remember she used to do, she was an online teacher. I don't know if professor is the right word, but she was an online teacher. She did that for a little bit. And I remember maybe late into elementary school or middle school, I remember she landed a job at SB Plus. So she started commuting downtown and working there. I don't even know exactly what her position was. I never asked, to be honest. I was too young to even understand it, know it, anything like that. It just never made sense to me, so I never asked. But I remember, she did what she needed to do. And my father, on the other hand, he always worked from home. And first it was real estate appraising. He had his own company, his own thing. He's verified, accredited. I don't think accredited is the right word, but he had his own thing going for him. And then I've talked to him lately, and he pieced it together after the housing crash, 2008. He kind of moved around. He had a different project where he was just talking. I think it was a lot of business and mindset shifting and things like that. And then the company that he owns currently, he operates currently, is Black history education and things like that. But I grew up in a household where my father was always at home. He always worked from home, and he always strived to educate himself. And two of the things that he always pushed onto us, or us being me and my older brother, something that he always really wanted us to understand was the importance of educating yourself from a young age, and necessarily figuring out the right paths to take depending on what time frame you lived in. Which sounds a little bit weird, but it makes sense given the time that I grew up in, because I was born 2003. My brother was born in 1999. So I remember there's any two paths that my dad wanted to push us down, and they do intersect a little bit. He wanted me and my brother to get into either computer science of some sort or entrepreneurship and being your own boss and owning your own company and things like that. My dad is an entrepreneur. He's not a computer scientist, obviously, but he is an entrepreneur. He started his own business, and I've been watching him grow it since. It's been an interesting, a quite fantastical and amazing experience to watch too, because I remember being very confused about it, not understanding it, thinking that he just kind of did whatever he wanted, and he would just run around and just talk his shit online, and it was just that. But as I've grown older, I've seen the impact he's been having on people and the legitimate amount of money he bring in to the household with it. But besides the point, those are the two things that he always wanted us to get into. So I spent a lot of my childhood kind of just trying to soak in that type of information, trying to figure out, is that something I want to do? Am I interested in it? Am I, quote unquote, good at it, naturally good at it? Just trying to figure out my place in the world. So I did some coding and things like that. I just I did like very, very minimal research ideas, because at the time I'm like, I've had to have been hearing that type of stuff since I was about 4. And by the age of 10, 11 is when I actually started to look into these type of topics. That's when I look into it, and I think it's interesting. Computer science was the one that stuck with me the hardest, because I didn't really care about the idea of ownership. I was just like, as long as I'm doing something that interests me, then why should I really care if I'm like my own boss and I'm working in my own time? Like, I just want to be, if I'm going to work, I just want it to be something that I necessarily enjoy. That was my only focus. I'm young. That's all I cared about. So I remember going into high school, and I declared myself unofficially, because no one's going to ask a freshman about his opinions on what he's going to do with his life. But I just remember going into high school believing I was going to come out of high school and go to college, a computer science major. So that was my thing. Freshman year, obviously, or I didn't go to a trade school. So freshman year didn't prepare me at all for computer science. So I just spent the first year of high school just believing that was it. That was just going to be me. I had fun. I learned a decent amount, I guess, for my age about different coding languages and things. My brother was even better at it than me, more into it than me. So he would teach me little things that he knew from all these other different languages. And it seemed cool. So that was just my thing. I was for it. That year ended, and I ended up going to sophomore year. And sophomore year, I transferred schools to go to this, I guess, technically, quote unquote prestigious high school. That's 3 years. It goes from sophomore year to senior year, graduation. So I transferred to the new school. And there, one of the actually classes that they require you to take as a sophomore entering the school was CSI, Computer Science Inquiry, which is just their intro computer science class. And I was pretty hyped to take it when I got in. So I walked into the school thinking, well, that's my life. That's what I want to do with myself necessarily. That's my calling. So I remember getting ready, going to the class, and it only took about 2 weeks to a month of being in that class for me to quickly realize that this is a mistake. Because the moment I moved out of kind of just freely exploring it into a actual curriculum and being assigned problems without having, like, I guess, too much guidance and stuff like that. Like, I wasn't necessarily reverse engineering my way through understanding what was going on. They would teach me the parts, tell me what the end goal is, and then tell me to figure out how are you going to get from point A to point B. And I hated it. I hated it wholeheartedly. I spent a lot of time with my roommate because it was a residential school, just talking to him because he understood it. To this day, he is still a computer science major. That's his type of thing. He's very good at it with that type of problem solving and just having the grit. But I would write stuff up, and on its basis, its core, it was correct. The concept was there, but the execution was improper. And trying to fix the flaws, the issues with what I made, it was too much. I just hated it. I hated bug fixing and just trying to understand why something that looks correct isn't correct. So very quickly into my sophomore year, I decided that no, never mind, I'm not going to do computer science. But that left me into a hole, basically, because then I realized I spent the last 3-4 years, basically up to that point, believing that computer science was something that I'd pursue like fully when I get to high school, and this is just gonna be it. And I didn't really give anything else thought. I never really gave a lot of things thought growing up. So I'm just like, well, what now? If I just abandoned plan A so quickly, there was never a plan B to begin with. What do I do here? And that feeling immediately left me with what I later figured out to be, I guess, the disappointment of feeling like I wasn't going to fulfill something that was imposed on me. In my head, I was just told, like, own your own business or go into computer science. Like, those are like the two paths. If you can intersect them, wonderful. But those are the two paths that you should probably take, because these are the two things that will help you get forward in life. It felt like an expectation. It felt like that's just what I should do. And now that I'm straying off of that path, on top of being confused, dazed, I'm a a lot better with it now. I'm a socially anxious kid. I don't have friends. I'm not really talking to people. I'm confused about my own future very quickly, and watching all these other people have a very quote unquote clear grip on what they want to do and what they want to pursue. And then on top of that, the thing I gave up was something that it felt like the people around me really wanted for me. And it left me feeling very bad about myself, to keep it very simple. I spent a lot of days just like, should I just pursue it anyway? Because that's all I really talked about when it came to what I wanted to do. I still have, when I talked about going to computer science so much, I remember my dad bought me an MIT shirt, which I still have to this day in my closet. Like, everyone around me was just like, oh, he's gonna be a computer science major. He seems to really like this. This is his thing. This is wonderful. Like, he's gonna be a genius. That's all people used to tell me when I was growing up. And I always resented those statements. I just never liked them. But I had even more reason to resent it now, because it went from idealization and being like, this kid's amazing, to feeling like if I wasn't to continue being this idealistic version of myself that they had of me in their head, then I was messing up. It didn't matter if I'm still ahead of other people. It didn't matter if I'm doing stuff that makes me happy, or I'm doing what a lot of people do at that time, which is just trying to figure out truly what matters most to me. If I didn't just continue down this path that they just created or just magically saw in me, I'm just not doing something right. And it messed me up. It was the expectation of following this path, expectation of being quote unquote great, this expectation of continuing to be the same person, even through some of the most influential years of my life. So by the time I hit junior year, where my school actually started to ask us, what major do you want to declare? I'm taking standardized testing. I'm taking the SAT, the ACT. You take both of those. They ask you, what are you declaring? Because they want to have an idea of what you're going to. There's more eyes on you when it comes to figuring out exactly what is it that this guy wants to do with himself. There's a lot of pressure. And I remember the first time I took a standardized test like that, I had to mark undeclared, because I hit a mental rock bottom in the sense that I didn't even see a future for myself. I was already dealing with some other mental mishaps to the point where I couldn't think straight. I couldn't see straight. But on top of not having an idea of what I actually wanted to accomplish and pursue for my own personal sake, I had nothing to lean on. So I wrote down whatever code it was on the paper. Undeclared. I don't have a major. I don't know what I want to do with myself. I'm just kind of here. And even just admitting that on paper to people who don't know who I am, people who don't care who I am, know nothing about me, it felt bad, because I knew everyone else in that room, majority of the people in that room, had a very good idea of what they wanted to do, at least at the time. It's something I struggled with. There's expectations. There's things that people want from me, expect from me. At times I feel like they even need it from me, because I have family, friends and teachers that spent their entire time knowing who I am, watching me grow up, just being like, this is a person. They recognize my individuality, but they failed to see me at anything below the surface level. They saw only what were the outcomes and not the mental processes that went below it, the effort that came in, anything from it. It didn't matter that I spent an abnormal amount of time whenever I wasn't at school, studying, being forced to study, having my older brother teach me things. They didn't see anything that went into it. All they saw were the outcomes. So they based everything about me off the outcomes. So I knew that if my outcomes were to change, there would be some pushback on it. To keep it simple, they would see it and be like, something changed. You changed. What's wrong with you? Like, you used to do X, Y, and Z. Why are you doing A, B, and C now? Like, I thought this was who you were. And it's just like, you're failing to see who I am. You're stuck in the past. You are seeing what I quote unquote used to be. You're seeing nothing. You're seeing nothing. You're just seeing essentially a facade that has been thrown up in front of you by me and my family and all the people that actually determine what goes on for me at early years. And you use that, and now you're using it against me because you feel like I'm just some type of deviant now. But I'm just living life the same way everyone else is. So there's that feeling of expectations. But there's something that I realized the same year that I started to mark on papers that I was undeclared, that in the grand scheme of things, when it comes to anything in this life, there's anything that matters. Nobody else's opinion matters but your own. There's nothing that anyone can really say or do necessarily, especially say, that should matter and should directly influence how you want to act. And obviously there's variance to this type of statement. I mean, if you want to go do something mischievous and someone tells you not to, there's morals and other societal factors to these type of things. But if you want to pursue something, the number one thing you should always recognize is that if you want to pursue something, you need to just pursue it and stop listening to the people that's around you, because people are always going to be stuck in their ways. And maybe they think it's in your best interest. Maybe that's what they're used to, because a lot of things that you hear and experience in early years is preparing you for a system that saps the soul out of you and makes you just another person. You're a number. You're another number to a lot of people. A lot of people shut down a lot of ideas. And even if it doesn't make it to other people, you shut down a lot of ideas that you have because you're afraid of what people will say in return to it. A great example of this, there's a lot of great examples. Everything that you see around you to this day is probably the result of someone telling someone their idea, receiving negative feedback, and not listening to it at all, because they have an idea for themselves. And the only person that matters when you're trying to get something done is yourself. The internet was supposed to be a massive fluke. Elon Musk with PayPal. They thought it was stupid people would use money online. They thought only cash would exist. Buying items online and websites, seen as stupid. Postal services, seen as stupid. They just thought USPS would handle everything. FedEx was completely tore down by people around the creator for a while, but they just did it. It didn't matter what else other people had to say. It didn't matter what their past was, what they accomplished, what they didn't accomplish. In their head, even if they felt this feeling of resentment towards what they were doing, they felt like they weren't living up to this quote unquote superimposed potential from society that they had to fulfill. They chose to go and chase what they wanted to chase themselves, which is the most important thing that you could possibly do. The most important thing to chase in this life, because you only have a certain amount of time and everyone has their own warped perception on life, is chasing the things that you want to pursue, not chasing the things that other people want you to pursue. People will forever have this very terrible sense of what's right and what's wrong, and what should you do and what you shouldn't do, what you should eat, what you shouldn't eat. The list goes on and on for everything in this world, and it somehow continuously changes depending on who you talk to. You can bring up one idea to a friend, they might tell you they think it's amazing. You tell the next closest friend to you, and they might ridicule you and laugh at you because they think that you're stupid for ever thinking that that was a good idea to begin with. It's amazing in nature, but it sucks how often people have different mindsets, and sometimes even how unwilling people are to change. But it makes sense given the society that we've been living in. A lot of people are unwilling to change because they've fallen victim to people above them who they see as intellectually superior, telling them that they need to get themselves mentally in line with other people. And the more that people buy into that mindset, the more there actually is a mentally in line capstone people could strive for. Because there's so many people in this world that have given up so many things in their life simply because people had told them that it was worthless to follow. A lot of things. Art is quite possibly one of the greatest examples we have of people who realized their potential and actually chased it later in life than they might have wanted to. I remember junior year, after I stopped deciding to declare myself as undeclared, I declared myself as an art major. Told my academic counselor, told my parents, told my friends, I want to go into art. No one really had any. My counselor was surprised because my school was a STEM school. She said I was, I think, her first student that ever wanted to go into art. She was just surprised. She was happy to figure out how can she help, which is a unicorn, which I have now come to realize. A lot of people don't have that mentality. My parents, luckily, even though they had their own feelings that I thought I was going against in morals and expectations, they did realize, luckily, that the only thing that does matter is your own happiness. You should do what excites you and what you're really passionate about, which is something that that's a line and a boundary that they often cross over a lot. There are some inconsistencies in how they feel about that type of thing, but for the most part, when it came to actually dictating a future for yourself, they didn't care what it was, as long as you were passionate about it and you actually sat down and took the time to actually figure out how to make it work. they didn't really care what it was. So they supported me. Some of my friends, on the other hand, and friends of friends, peers, people that I just happened to know, when I heard it, I remember the first thing I heard a lot was, how are you going to live off that? There was just this overwhelming consensus that art is just a passion. It's just something you do when you just have time. And you only get luck. You just get lucky if you end up with a livable amount of money per month or in your entire lifetime. Which I don't blame them for. All young, we're stupid. Always important to know you're stupid. When you're young, you don't know a lot. I don't know a lot. I know that for a fact. But, when you're 15, 16, all you know about art are the greats. So if you only know about the top, you don't understand necessarily what the middle looks like. They didn't have a clue. Just like if you're not painting these amazing portraits and landscapes and things, which they don't even understand how it makes so much money, then you'll just be nothing. It doesn't matter that they live in a society, they live in a world where everything is dictated by artists of some sort. They just expect it to be a thing. They don't understand that every time they get a can of soda, someone designed how it looked. When they look at labels on things, someone designed what it looks. They're buying these posters and they're insanely into music of all types. They don't realize how much someone paid someone to do that. They live a life where they are consumed by art. Art is surrounding them. Yet they immediately have this disposition to tell you that it's not worth going into it because that's what they hear. They don't take the time to actually recognize everything around me was once just an idea. Everything around me is artistic in a way. If you look at a book, someone designed it. If you're into anime, someone's drawing it. They don't understand it. They just tell you what they heard. They regurgitate what other people tell them. And a lot of people will just tell you to just stick to the quote unquote script. Go to high school. Go to the best college you can. Take out loans for it. Find a stable job. Get a career at a company. Retire when you're old. And figure it out. They just have a linear path. And it gets boring. It saps the soul out of you. But that's what happens when you live under other people's expectations. It's great to have expectations for yourself, but expectations for yourself are derived from wants and needs and passions. If you have an expectation for yourself, your expectation is based on the fact that this is something that you want to get, something that you want to feel, experience, etc. And you wouldn't be happy if you didn't get it. It's an expectation that you experience this type of feeling. So you can have an expectation for yourself too if you're an artist, which is just always going to be my best example. If you're an artist, you want to be featured in your local town's art gallery. That's your own thing. You have the choice to decide if that's no longer an expectation of yourself, or if you are driven by expectations, you can use that deep desire for that to be fulfilled as the fuel to reach that goal. The expectations for yourself are goals. It just matters, and that's just it. That's That's all you need to worry about. It's just, what are your own goals? But you're always going to hear someone be like, oh, when are you going to learn this? When are you going to find an actual job? When are you going to do something that they see for yourself? But what they see for yourself doesn't matter if you don't see it for yourself as well. Like, their version of you isn't who you are, nor how you perceive yourself. Their opinions are invalid. Their opinions don't matter in the end. What does it do for you? And finally coming to that realization that a lot of things that people say don't really matter is how I escaped from this idea of failed potential. I spent a lot of time in high school crying on the verge of tears, being pretty angry with the idea that there were so many people in my life, personally, that expected so many different things from me that I wasn't able to fulfill necessarily, whether it be by choice or legitimate inability to. I felt like I had this obligation to just do whatever they felt like I should be doing. But when I realized that it's not their life, and they don't see me for who I actually am, they just see me for what's in front of them. It's smoke in the mirror. That's when I realized that the only way that I can experience this idea of failed potential is when I recognize what I want and what I need in this world, and I don't do everything in my power to actually reach it. That is the only form of failed potential that you should ever feel, is when you want something and you refuse to actually go and try to get it, regardless of what it takes. And it's not to say you have to be hell-bent on it now. You don't have to have a dream for yourself and throw every single thing away to try to get it. But the moment you actually still want it, but you decide that you'll never go for it, and you discard it, and you try to act like it never existed, that's failed potential. The only person in this world that you shouldn't try to disappoint, the only person that you should never want to disappoint, is yourself. You live with yourself every day. You are yourself. You and yourself are the same person. And if you're going to spend every single day with this person, you should do your best to figure out how can you make them happy. And being happy is doing the things that make you feel whole. And whatever it is whatever it is. You don't have to be this multi-million-dollar mogul who just makes money just writing food reviews or whatever. You don't have to be insanely famous blogger or model, anything. I know people who find pride and fulfillment and feel like they satisfied their potential by applying skills and crafts that they learned growing up into their own life, and they just do whatever they feel like doing. Some people find potential in just find that they are fulfilling their potential in just providing public services to people, even if it wasn't their initial goal or something that they ever thought about. There are some people who are just able to feel satisfied with themselves in the end of the day by just doing a public service, doing things that we need done regardless of how we feel. They just want to give back. They feel like that's the thing that makes them satisfied. That's their potential. The potential is to save people and help people, firefighters, police officers, EMTs, everything. Even people who want to make a career out of a certain company that we are infatuated with in our society. Amazon, Google, Apple, Microsoft, etc. Some people are simply just happy with doing jobs that people know they need to be fulfilled. Food services, even. It's just what they want to do. And there's something wrong with that. The only thing that really matters is it something that you really foresee for yourself. It doesn't matter if someone else doesn't want it for you. That really doesn't matter. Someone could have a very warped sense of you and just want you to be, this model or whatever. Or let's just say you're really good at carpentry and you spent all your days in the garage with this parental figure, this adult that just taught you everything about woodworking and welding and everything to be an amazing craftsman. You have everything, basically. And this is going to be someone who is extremely versatile with tools. And you want to be a chef. You rather be in the kitchen and make food. You enjoy making different meals and playing with food and just seeing the happiness on people's faces when they try something that you made and they think that it's amazing. That's not failed potential at all. Your potential at that point is more fulfilled than most people in this lifetime, because you knew what you wanted to do with yourself. You knew what made you happy, and you did it. You fulfilled your potential. You did exactly what made you feel whole. You felt like that was the end piece to yourself, or at least that's the checkpoint for yourself. It doesn't have to be, it could always change necessarily, but you found what made you happy. You figured out what you think you can apply yourself to, and you actually applied yourself to it. That's succeeded potential. You followed your wants over your expectations. Didn't matter if you spent 10, 15 years of your life practicing this one craft because this one other thing just interests you a lot more. What they wanted from you from those last 10, 15 years that they put into you is an expectation that you just follow it. It doesn't matter. You didn't fail. It's not failed potential at that point. It's your life. You should live it how you feel like you should live it. What people say, what people do, how people act, it doesn't matter. It shouldn't affect you. Something greater in this world. There's no greater freedom in this world, especially if you are granted the freedom. You should do the things that you are able to do and things that you want to do. And sometimes things don't always work out as intended. It's still not failed. If you tried, then you didn't fail. It just didn't happen. That's okay. That's perfectly fine. Sometimes. Most of the time. Every single time. Every time. As long as you try. If the effort is made, you can never say that you truly failed. Failure is the lack of an attempt. Really. Jump the tallest hurdle that you can find. If you don't make it over, that's okay. That's fine. You can stop trying. But the fact that you tried is amazing in itself. Because there's not a lot of people that even attempt to try. They look at it. They look at that hurdle. And they turn around and they leave. and they might look back. Sometimes they don't. They just leave it as it is. And maybe they feel regret, maybe they don't. They're just living life. And sometimes they might just forget about it. It's the idea that you even tried in the first place that sets you apart, gives you that personal fuel to just kind of just keep going. Failed potential doesn't exist. The things people say to you, things you hear, everyone is their own person with their own thoughts. However, they're crafted, molded, varies from person to person. But the only thing that matters is that their experiences aren't yours. People they grew up with, friends and family, they aren't your friends and family. They're teachers. They're everything about them. They're not you. And if they're not you, why would you let them determine what your potential is? Why would you let them tell you if you're living up to their expectations or not? There's no such thing as failed potential. You only fail if you never try.